Hello, everyone, and welcome to STOked, the ultimate Star Trek online podcast. My name is Chris.
My name is Jeremy.
Yo there, J-Man.
Hi, Chris.
You know what?
What?
I had a big realization today, and
What
I'm
was
going to be
that?
completely honest with you and the entire internet. It happened while I was naked, wet, and slathered in soap. I'm sorry, Jeremy, but that's the reality of the situation.
Somebody get me some brain bleach.
So, no, actually, you know, STOked is hitting its 59th episode. And Stowe, the game itself, has already passed the 6 months. In fact, we're around that corner. People have hit their 300-day accolades and rewards. You got your vet reward.
Well, I didn't.
Oh, you didn't. I did.
I don't know what's going on with that. I'll figure it out.
But
I'm
got
smart enough to
fireworks,
get it. Yeah.
And I have a little tradition now that I've already integrated into the core of my space combat gameplay.
Okay.
Whenever I hit 50% hull or less, I fire off the fireworks.
Let's be honest. That's pretty frequently with you.
Well, it is now, dude. I switched to a Nebula.
Oh.
And I have been playing in the Excelsior, but I haven't.
You
I
poor schmuck.
I was totally spec'd for a cruiser, and I switched over to a science ship now, J-Man. And let me tell you what, it's working. But I can tell I don't hit quite as hard as I used to.
Yeah.
Now, that's all because I was getting ready to play this the last episode in the Series 2 that came out, Night of the Comet.
That's right.
Went out and got myself a new ship.
Really excited.
Super excited.
We know that there was going to be space combat in this one because we knew somebody had let slip previously that we were going to take our ship back in time.
Yeah. Well, I think Franklin Drake did, but or one of our boffs.
Well, he's somebody.
So I thought, you know what, I'm gonna go get my science toys on because I've been wanting to fire off my gravity well and crap like that. Got myself in the Nebula, which I have reservations about. I don't mind it so much. I'm pretty much completely the other variant. I forget what it's called.
I'll be completely honest. You made it look pretty good. Basically as good as a Nebula can get.
Thank you.
And that's not saying a lot.
No, I know. So ironic that we spent the entire time actually as a holographic Klingon ship.
Yeah.
Because I didn't play as... I mean, I had the same abilities as the Nebula.
Right, but you didn't look like your ship.
I didn't.
No.
So
Except when you blew up, which, as I mentioned earlier, was quite frequent.
Oh, well, we'll get into that. And there's a reason why we blew up so much. But let's start at the top of this episode, the slingshot effect. I think Bilbo in the chat room put it best. The first 5 minutes of this are some of the greatest Stowe yet.
Yeah.
It's pretty fun.
It's so much fun. I'm actually hoping that somebody can take this, the same content that they actually used in this map and maybe make like some sort of a race.
If you had like a system where the planets were sort of like cones, so you had to, fly around. That'd
absolutely.
Be so much fun.
Because I'll be honest, once you started speeding up through the slingshot, I almost missed a ring.
Yeah. And I had to wait on my group, so I got to go through twice. So but I was already going fast, so the second time through, I was going twice as fast.
Whoa.
It was awesome. All right, so that
a lot of fun.
That was a lot of fun. Now, I mentioned I was grouped, and I think I'm going to touch on that next. In my opinion, the grouping was not appropriate for this episode.
Yeah.
There was a lot of things that I felt like I missed because I was grouped.
It's ironic that an MMO messes up grouping on occasion.
Word, dude.
Yeah.
What is
kind of
with
disappointing.
that?
But, things like dialogues would pop up because somebody else in your team had progressed to that point, interacted with somebody. You might have not even gotten ready to do that, but all of a sudden, because they're doing it, you are doing it.
Well, an example was I didn't get to see my ship. Dialogue box was up, and they had already loaded and spawned before I did. So I was already a Klingon ship, and I was so even at that slingshot effect, I didn't get to see myself go from my Nebula class to the Klingon ship.
Right.
And then when we were on ground, there was a lot of dialogues that I missed because of it. Like, for example, this is a little bit of a spoiler here, so just a warning, but Scotty's in this episode.
Montgomery Scott.
Kind of a really neat moment, and I didn't really get to read the context of that. Now, that's not the group's fault at all.
No, it's really just the design of how a group interacts with a specific mission.
So
I think that there are quite a few missions in the game that work for groups, even right down to the dialogue pop-ups and everything.
Yeah.
This is not one of them.
In fact, some of these episodes have worked really great as groups, like the one where you're doing the sound harmonics and things like that. But I actually found the grouping was so bad that I got to this final space combat scene, and I actually dropped the mission and went back and soloed it. That's bad. That doesn't usually happen for me, and so I would say that part sort of put me off. But then once I kind of ate my sandwich, had my sandwich time, that's important.
Sandwich time is always important.
And I came back and I replayed it, and I liked it. I felt maybe like the ground combat got a little dogpiley again. What were your thoughts on that?
That's a great word. That's my first thought. I agree. I agree completely. And I think the main problem there is that the Devidian combat, when you first get down to the restored Drasana, there's 6 groups that you have to take on.
And they're not small groups either.
No, 6 is just too many.
And there's a lot of visual effects going on the screen. You've got...
Especially you were using those pattern enhancers a lot.
And then when I was grouped, we had a couple of them going off at once. Yeah. So you've got that visual effect combined with the Devidian's natural visual effects that they have.
And then that warping around thing that they do. And
there's just a lot going on the screen, and there's 6 of them at a time. And it wasn't...
Serious visual overload.
It wasn't so bad when I could step back and kind of be a little more tactical about it. But... yeah, I kind of got burnt out on the ground combat.
You know, Dixonium in the chat room actually mentions this. It's a good point that it felt a little worse because the spaces were a bit confined. Now, I think that they've been doing this on purpose because they want to make interiors a little more smaller. They've gotten a lot of complaints about the interiors being too big in the Fast. I think he's right.
Yeah,
I think that a lot of them felt more confined.
Yeah,
so
yeah, I would agree that
there's a lot of give and take
objects
there.
In the rooms too also kind of contributed to that. Sometimes you get hung up on that, and which is interesting because so far I've been pretty happy with the ground combat.
Yeah.
So
for this whole series.
Yeah. So to come away from this one, I don't know. I just kind of felt like maybe it didn't click for me.
I think it was just too much. I think we could have done with 2 or 3 groups and then gone back to the... Although, you know what? After ground combat came that epic failure of a puzzle doing the whole alcohol thing, where you have to go, okay, first you follow Scotty halfway across the station, then he tells you to go talk to a supplier, who tells you to go talk to a bartender, who tells you to go talk to a waitress, who tells you to go talk to Scotty, who tells you to go talk to the supplier again, who tells you to go talk to the bartender. Oh my God.
It was too much.
It was ridiculously, stupidly long and boring.
And going back to the grouping part, I had some sort of problem where the teammate was picking up my drink and taking it to her, or I would pick up my drink and then they would be interacting with her and give her the wrong drink. So by the time I got to her, she would just tell me to go back and get a drink for her, even though I had the drink. And you could even see in my chat log, that I had picked up the
nerve toxin.
Yeah, that I had received
toxin.
That item.
Tonic.
Yeah. And so that was a frustrating.
I would rather have had a nerve toxin. Just inject that jerk and steal her stuff.
Well, that's what I was saying. It's like I would love a Jack Bauer moment right now, just to just take the gun out and say, "Give me."
Pull
this.
yourself together.
Yeah,
I got a job to do.
I'm a Starfleet captain trying to save this entire sector. I would rather not run between the bartender and the waitress and Scotty a few times.
Yeah,
Scotty's awesome, but maybe I could just have a button that says, "Hey, Scotty, can you just go ask her for me?"
And you know what? Knowing Scotty, by the time we had gotten halfway through, by the time we were talking to the waitress, Scotty probably would have gotten on his own butt and said, "Where the hell are my parts?" and walked across the station.
I don't know. I know we're getting nitpicky there, but let's just be honest. It wasn't.
It was
super
probably
enjoyable.
The weakest puzzle that they've had yet in their series.
And what I appreciate about that is the puzzles we've had too tough. We've had a sweet spot, and now this is a little bit too far.
I don't know that we have had a sweet spot.
I don't know. Really? I think the computer memory one was pretty good. On the when you go back to Drasana Station and you overload the computer memory banks.
Yeah, the first one from last week's mission.
Yes.
Not bad. Yeah.
I thought that was kind of more. That would kind of be more my sweet spot range.
And it moved along quickly. It got you onto the next segment. It wasn't this long, drawn-out ordeal.
They're saying in the chat room they thought the Breen puzzles were more superior to that.
I actually agree.
Yeah, the Breen puzzles weren't bad. And I'd mentioned
in general,
the harmonics
more
one.
difficult.
Yeah.
But at the same time, also, I think just better thought out.
Right.
Where it's not too confusing,
Yep.
but it's also not boring.
Yep.
The one thing that probably turned me off the most about this mission, though, was the final space combat. Okay, you know what? I just want to say this right now. Franklin Drake did not do his homework.
Yeah, he was a little sloppy this one.
It's a history lesson.
Yeah.
Why did he not figure this out? First of all, we go back in time. We immediately get attacked by a Fed ship.
Yep.
Because we apparently matched this energy signature of another Klingon ship that they were tracking.
Oopsies.
One down, Frank. The second one is as soon as we leave Drasana Station, spoilers, you get attacked by somebody that thinks you're from the House of Duras. And
so you got Klingons picking on you and Feds picking on you.
Frankie, you're killing me here, Mr. Drake.
How about you get a different holo emitter next time, big guy?
Yeah.
And the fact that he accidentally equipped my entire team with that same one. Big oopsies there, Frank.
Yeah, but that final combat was just a pain in the butt. As a science ship doing it solo, science is not outfitted for high damage potential.
Right.
Those 200-year-old ships were ripping me apart.
And this is where you're making the jokes about dying a lot earlier in the show, and this is exactly where it happened, is it both you and I got to point, both flying science. At this point, I was solo, and you were solo. We would approach it, and the eventual tactic that we had to take was fly off in this direction to pull the Klingons, just keep them entertained and survive as long as you can. Die as far away from the common as possible, hoping that when you respawn, the Klingons have to travel. Get as much damage done to the common as you can before you get blowed up by the Klingons. Respawn and repeat.
Yeah. Boring. Now, I think that the way that it's supposed to be played is that you take out each group of Klingons as they spawn.
Yeah.
But two things happened to me. First of all, I took out the first group of Klingons and then started going after the comet. By the time I noticed that more Klingons were spawning, I had 4. Mm-hmm. And 4 of those old D7 or D9, D12, D300 cruisers were...
smackdowns, dude. They were cutting through my shield like a hot knife through delicious sweet cream butter.
Absolutely.
It was painful.
Yeah.
And...
they just don't make them like they used to.
Apparently they made them mean back in the day, and we, for whatever reason, not gone back to that. It
was a pain.
A little brutal, and I'm sure people in the comments will give us their approaches, and I'd love
really
to
what
hear
it all
them,
comes down to is being able to do either enough damage to outdamage the Klingons and take them out quickly, or enough damage to take out the comet before you're just scattered across the sector.
And that's what I ended up doing, and using my science abilities to get it done. It's funny, though, because we've just ranted on it, okay? And... I want to take a step back.
Pretty much everything about the mission we just ranted about.
But it's only it's your own fault, Cryptic, because what's happened is these episodes have set a bar.
Bar?
Yeah.
Mission.
Yeah. But a lot of the early game content is also down here.
Yeah.
And so
or lower.
Yeah, or lower.
Yeah.
And I think that if you look at this game as an overall, this is still immensely playable. I'll play it again. In fact, I'll probably play it again.
Do you remember probably 3 or 4 months ago? Basically, everybody across the board that was playing STO would say that City on the Edge of Never is the best mission in the game.
Yeah, that was the go-to.
I think that if somebody started playing right now, it would probably be a tough call. There would be many of these weekly series that we've been getting as featured episodes that people would be going, well, yeah, City on the Edge of Never was good, but Cold Comfort was great. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I agree. I think that they've been steadily increasing the bar so that when they don't meet it, even if they're exceeding their previous expectations, it still feels like a disappointment at this point.
And I think maybe the intention behind the additional ground combat and the tough space combat was this is the finale episode. This is, your epic cliffhanger ender.
Yeah.
Which, when Enterprise in their 4th season was doing those 3-4-part story arcs, the final one would have the most battles and it'd be the most epic.
Right.
And that's understandable, and I appreciate that.
Side note, though, those final episodes would not have included you having to run between a bartender, a waitress, and Scotty, and the supplier, and the bartender, and the waitress.
And the other thing you have to ask yourself is, if you really could have just warped in back in time, before you even beam down to the Drazana station, why not just destroy the comet while it's right there?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what... And then
your whole purpose of being there is to not screw up the timeline.
And then give me an accolade that says, blew up the comet without screwing up the timeline. Congratulations, mission complete.
Yeah.
Would you like to replay? And then I'll go replay, and I'll try it the hard way.
Ooh.
Right?
Yeah.
Because that was... I'm going to try to be clever as possible. I didn't feel right at any moment when I was killing a Klingon or blowing up a Klingon ship, because that's... Apparently, I'm cool about altering the timeline as long as it's not a human that I'm altering their timeline.
Right.
If I'm screwing up a clink, that's fine. I can go kill hundreds of clinks.
There was a special thing that if you managed to not destroy Bavat, there was a special optional mission thing. I don't know if it got you an accolade or something.
I didn't manage not to do that. Actually,
I didn't manage not to either. Because I had him disabled at one point and then called in a Photonic fleet to try to save my butt, and they destroyed him.
Yeah. God, I mean, I don't want to end the review on a sour note, but those are just kind of my closing thoughts. I would have loved a non-combat solution there.
And this is basically, I think one of the sourest points of this is basically the last new content we're going to get for a little while.
Maybe, yeah.
I mean, the last featured episode. We know that Series 3 is not coming out until January.
Right.
But in the meantime, we do have Season 3 coming out soon. And I actually landed on Tribble.
Yeah. Jinx, Coke. It's on Tribble, and it's funny. I have been getting up so early recently that I woke up just naturally on Saturday, like at 6 a.m., and I thought...
Are you crazy?
I know. Ridiculous. And I'm like, well, if I'm up, I might as well go see what I can do in STO. Season 3 hit Tribble, and I thought, okay, this morning...
Gotta see it.
I gotta go in there. So I jumped into Tribble this morning. Did you jump in there late last night?
No, actually, sadly, I don't have enough hard drive space on my computer at home. I had to remove Tribble.
You sent me an instant message late last night.
I was doing my internet stalking of everybody else that had been playing on Tribble.
Okay.
Looking at all their pretty pictures.
Well, first thing I did was jump into Sector Space.
Yeah.
And Sector Space was looking slick.
Oh, man, I love it.
Okay.
I love it.
I'm not huge on the
I know. I love it.
The grid thing until you start approaching one of the new systems.
Yeah.
Or I guess any system, because as you approach a system and get closer, you start to see the system's planets.
I don't know if you can tell. It's a very subtle effect, but the actual graphics themselves, grow at a faster rate than you're actually approaching them. It gives you actually a feeling of the distance, of the vastness of it.
Yeah.
Because you're actually only like this far from it in your ship, but as you get closer, it physically grows to make it appear as though you're approaching it from a vaster distance. Yeah.
Yeah, and it also makes it, that combined with the warp streaks, make it feel like you're going very fast.
Very fast. The first time I got into sector space, I actually turned my throttle down because I was afraid that I was getting too far from where I wanted to be.
I did the same thing. I did the same thing. What was cool, now here's the problem. When I turn off those grid lines, because I'm bigger as my ship than all the other objects still, really, their perspective's wrong, so it's not like I'm in space. So now it's just like I'm in a low UI version of astrometrics. So
but doesn't it feel better? I mean, doesn't it feel like more like you were at warp in a vast
but
area?
Because the scaling's wrong,
then it breaks down when you get too close to something.
So I just prefer to have the visualization layout.
No,
I like it though.
I can actually agree.
And
with
I think
that.
it looks good. Okay, so that's really a lot to talk about just for.
Dude, but while we're talking about sector space, I got to tell, if you guys are on Tribble, fly to the Badlands.
Oh my God!
It is a wicked effect.
About that. The Badlands look good.
There's also apparently a very similar effect on the Mutara Nebula down in Gamma Orionis.
That'd be cool.
And the Briar Patch.
And we checked out Deep Space Nine. That model has
it's gotten some cosmetic upgrades.
And the lighting's a little different, but if you actually go in, there's been some cosmetic upgrades as well as the Earth space dock has gotten some, I think, good cosmetic upgrades. This looks real.
This looks like the first step in their eventual revamp of what they're doing with it. They've added some new areas. They've revamped where some of the vendors are.
Yeah.
We're not going to go too much into details about that because I have a feeling a lot of that's going to continue to change.
Yeah. What did you think of the model redesign?
It looks a little more realistic in some areas, but let's be honest, it's still not space dock. So better, but you're still epic eons away from where you need to get to.
Yeah.
So
I don't know. It's nice, but it's kind of like putting a spoiler on the back of a slow car and calling it a sports car.
Right.
It's good.
That's a great analogy.
I mean, but that diminishes a little bit of the improvement because it looks a little more rounded. It's got more like docking pods now where you could visualize ships are parked and they're getting fixed.
Right.
And stuff. So I don't mean to hate.
Another new feature that's landed on Tribble right now that you guys can go check out is the mission replay is finally available. The way that you get around to it is kind of weird. I like it, but it's a little convoluted. You have to go to your bridge and then into your ready room and access your mission logs. They're in your ready room.
But this plays back into what they've been talking about, adding more ship interior functionality, specifically with the ready room. But
I would have, honestly, preferred it to be go to your ship interior, walk to the holo suites, load up the program, and then you're instantly in the map. You don't have to do any traveling in sector space or anything. You just get to immediately replay the episode right there. Of
course, that would be awesome. But
that's what I want.
Yeah.
This is a nice middle ground.
This is a problem that I have with STO. Is there sometimes some tribal knowledge involved? How the F, as a new player, am I ever going to know?
Yeah.
First of all, I've got no reason to ever take me to my ship other than this.
Unless you want to maybe set up your trophies in your ready room. There's no other reason to go to your ready room.
So, how am I going to learn about this? I'm going to have to hear about it.
Somebody's going to have to tell you?
I don't know. What do you think of that?
I agree. I think it's weird. But at the same time, I kind of like it still because it gives a little more reason for the ship interior.
A little more depth.
And it's a great place to have it, your ready room, to review your mission logs.
And if you add more stuff to that over time, there's more and more things that are going to bring you there. So eventually that problem sort of auto-corrects itself.
Yeah. Because then you will always have a reason to go to your interior to do this thing or that thing.
You're going to be there anyways, and that just finding that console will just happen.
Yeah. Now, something I want to mention about the mission replay is that these new missions that you can, they're old missions that you can replay are still going to be the original level that they were when you originally played them.
Yeah, that seems like that. So that seems like if it's a lower level mission, it's probably going to have equivalently lower XP and things like that.
Yep, and lower level enemies, lower level loots, lower level drops, lower level everything. But you do get
special reward. Some of them have a reward.
Some of them have special secondary mission rewards that you only get when you replay them.
So that seems good.
Those special rewards are the same rank as the original mission, though. So really, you're only getting a really good benefit from it if you do the same mission back to back. Twice in a row or within the same few levels.
I don't know any reason to do that other than
to get the reward.
And then mail it to a lower level alt?
I don't know if you can mail it.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering.
I don't really know.
But that would be a reason to replay to get that gear to help out the character.
That would be a great reason. Now, if you want to check out some of those rewards, there's a new one on Saharian Sword and the Romulan front, and there's a new one on City on the Edge of Never. out in the Klingon front.
Cool. So is there anything else in Season 3 that you wanted to...
I think so. The contact UI got upgraded. Dude, the blinky button.
Jeez, I
can't... The blinky button is gone.
No more. The OCD maniac in me says thank you, thank you, thank you, and it looks great.
And it's integrated right into your quest log.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
and the contacts are organized much better. Mm-hmm. They're broken down.
You can also see what they're actually offering you. You can't actually access it until you hail them, but you can see. So if you're trying to remember who offers me the exploration of Betran, you can actually see what each of the contacts will tell you when you hail them.
That is so nice.
Nice.
Yes.
That's a big win.
Now, there was also some updates for the Klingons. KDF crafting, that's pretty huge.
Yeah, unfortunately, right now, if you want to head over to Tribble and try it out, you have to be a low-level character to start it. The only ones that are offering you the crafting rewards are the new sorties. Mm-hmm. They're also available on Tribble. I haven't had a chance to check them out, but I plan to soon. But the crafting drops that come out of those missions are leveled to you appropriately. So if you're a lieutenant general and you go into them, you'll get top-level crafting stuff, even though you have no skill in crafting. You won't be able to start. No, it's not nice. You can't start crafting unless you're level 10.
Oh! I thought you said that if you go in there, you'll get the best. I thought you meant you'll get the best gear you could get at your level.
You will. You'll get the best crafting, but because Klingons have not had access to crafting up to this point, they need the worst.
Oh, I didn't think
about that. So they can grind up.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That
so hopefully they
don't have any skills.
They need to get them turned on before this goes live.
Oh, you Klingons need to get your skills. So I guess how do they? What's their solution?
None currently.
New characters only?
Yeah. Hopefully they will get those things turned on in the exploration clusters and other existing missions before it goes live. But
that's gonna make some people mad.
It's an oversight, and they need to correct it.
Oh man! But luckily for me, I have not. I mean, not luckily. I just really have not invested much time in a Klingon. Though with all of these, I don't know. You got new ships. You got crafting now. You got new content. I could totally see how you could play this last weekly episode from the Klingon perspective.
Oh yeah.
I'm getting really tempted to really put some time into a Klingon.
I'm planning on it in the very near future.
Well, we're going to have a 6-week period where there's no new episodes.
That might be a very good time to get my Klingon on.
I think so.
Klingon on.
Now, we don't have a community feedback segment this week.
We don't.
I know. But you know what we do have, J-Man?
What do we have?
You're going to math us on the Crystalline Entity.
Again. It's a rerun.
Yeah. Well, the first one, maybe a little backstory here. That first Crystalline Entity walkthrough, it's one of our higher Google searched episodes.
And it was our first math.
And we didn't really have a format.
No. I didn't know what I was doing.
And we were playing it live, and there's 3 of us during it. So we thought, let's revisit that segment.
So we're going to give you a condensed walkthrough. Hopefully it will help you be successful. Hopefully it will help me be successful. I still haven't killed that sucker.
All right, everyone. Let's get mathed.
Today we will once more confront the Silicon Avatar itself. Friend of lore, foe of all other life. The sinister snowflake, the carbon crusher, the devouring diamond, the crystalline entity. I will not be discussing tactics in this segment, except in specific cases where your equipment and abilities are dictated by them, because that is what I will be covering, how to equip your ship and which boffs to bring to the fight. In order to have a better understanding of why you would need the specific type of equipment, I will cover a few of the Crystalline Entity's primary abilities, the most notable of which is its innate rate of regeneration. At Vice Admiral, the entity has 2.5 million hit points and recovers 1% of these every second. In order to overcome this innate regeneration, you will have to be dishing out a total of 25,000 DPS sustained after factoring the entity's significant damage resistance. Additionally, the entity will continuously spawn smaller shards of itself. The fragments, with no size indicator, deal damage directly to your hull, therefore rendering shields irrelevant. Large fragments, which will only begin appearing in Phase 3 of the encounter, will busticate themselves into 3 small fragments upon impact with anything. Now, these small fragments will rush back to Daddy and heal him for 1% of his hit points each. This means that a single collision with a large fragment can heal the entity for more than 75,000 hit points. So let's get into how to re-equip your ship. First of all, and very importantly, Do not bring any mines, high-yield plasma, and tricobalts, because they can and will be targeted by large fragments during Phase 3, causing widespread panic and pandemonium in the form of swarms of small fragments that will pop the entity's hit points back to max in no time flat. So if that leaves energy weapons. There are a few types of energy, however, that you should avoid. Phasers, Polarons, and Tetryons. You see, the Crystalline Entity has no subsystems and has no shields, so the aforementioned energy types will render no benefit beyond their base damage. On the other hand, Disruptors, with their debuff, will make the Crystalline Entity take additional damage from everybody firing upon it. And Plasma will burn the sucker. Enough said. As for Anti-Proton, there's no additional benefits innate to the weaponry, but they usually have really nice bonuses. Plus, they're pretty. Now, as for your Bridge Officer ability selections, let's go profession by profession. In your tactical slots, do not bring any abilities that rely upon mines. By the same token, don't bring any subsystem targeting abilities, as they have no purpose against the Crystalline Entity. It's best to use buffs that increase the DPS of you and or your teammates. Beam Overload, Tactical Team, and Attack Patterns are your best bets here. For engineers, do not bring boarding parties. Aside from being utterly worthless, they can also be targeted by fragments just as mines can. Shield heals will only be useful during Phase 1, so those also might not be so great to bring along. Focus on hull heals and DPS increases. Eject Warp Plasma could come in handy if you're planning to kite the fragments. Now, Science Officers get the short end of the stick here, because unfortunately there aren't many abilities they can use that will actually be useful during this encounter. Shield heals, such as Science Team and Transfer Shield Strength, are again only useful in Phase 1, so concentrate on hull heals. Energy Siphon is an interesting ability that could benefit you during this encounter, because even though it has no effect on the entity, it does raise your ship's energy levels and therefore your potential DPS output. Many of your fellow players may recommend that you spam Scramble Sensors on the entity. However, this only occasionally confuses the fragments into not following nearby targets. It is very unreliable. However, it's got a 360-degree firing arc, which makes it very easy to fire off no matter where you are running from shards. As for general abilities that your captain can use during this encounter, it's very important to avoid, at all costs, the use of any of the following abilities: Ramming Speed, Photonic Fleet, and or Fleet Support. The reason for this is that each of these abilities run an extremely high risk of colliding with large fragments, which will heal the entity as previously mentioned. Now, Science Captains must spam their Sensor Scan ability at all times. The DPS increase is an absolute necessity to offset the aforementioned regeneration. By the same token, Tactical Captains must keep Fire on My Mark active at all times. In summary, escorts and cruisers far outstrip the capabilities of science vessels for this encounter due to the limited number of science buff abilities that are actually beneficial against the entity and the lower overall DPS of science ships. It is imperative during this encounter that you do not die. Every time you die, that big bad hunk of shiny benefits from your failure. It's not just a matter of pride. He will heal himself and the rest of the team will lose out on your DPS. So until we figure out a way to hook up Klingon Opera to our deflector dish and bust out a harmonic resonance, the best advice I can offer you all is to read, understand, and share your knowledge. There is no single encounter in STO that is more misunderstood or incorrectly referenced than the fight against the Crystalline Entity. It is up to each of us to learn its tricks and tell others how to learn them as well, because after all, knowing is half the battle.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to STOked, the ultimate Star Trek Online podcast.
Do it again. I think you smacked your mic.
I did.
Yeah, that part goes by really fast, but you know what? You can rewind it. My girly moment of the day. I got really chapped lips. And you, the other knee.
This is STOked. Stop.